The factory floor at night looked like a fairy tale. Rows of girls hunched over tiny watch dials, their brushes tipped in paint that glowed soft green in the darkness. Some of them wore it like jewelry. They'd paint their nails during lunch breaks, dab it on their teeth before a date so their smiles would shine under the moon. One girl, Molly Maggia, used to coat her dress buttons. She'd walk home through the streets of Newark, New Jersey, glowing like a ghost in her own body. The paint was called Undark, and the girls who worked with it every single day were told it was completely harmless. Healthier than vitamins, actually. Here's the thing about radium. It doesn't ask permission. By 1922, Molly Maggia's teeth started falling out. Not one or two. All of them. Her jaw came next, crumbling like wet chalk when the dentist tried to extract what was left. The doctors called it syphilis. Because apparently, when a young working-class woman's body disintegrates from the inside, the most logical explanation is a moral failing. Meanwhile, in the same building, the chemists and executives at US Radium Corporation wore lead aprons in the laboratory. They handled the radium with tongs. They knew. But the girls on the floor? They were taught a technique called lip pointing. You take the brush, put the tip between your lips, twist it into a fine point, dip it in radium paint, and start again. Lick, dip, paint. Sometimes, 100 times a day. The supervisors demonstrated it themselves. If the image of corporate executives in lead shields telling teenage girls to put poison in their mouths is the kind of historical madness you want to uncover, make sure you're subscribed, because it gets worse. By 1924, women were dying. Dozens of them. Their bones snapped like dry twigs. Some of them glowed so brightly in their coffins that mourners could see the light through the wood, and US Radium hired private investigators to dig up dirt on the girls. They spread rumors. One company doctor testified that the real problem was bad dental hygiene. The girl whose jawbone fell out of her face simply wasn't flossing enough. Grace Fryer was one of the survivors. Barely. By 1927, she couldn't walk without a cane. Her spine was compressing, vertebra by vertebra. She wanted to sue. Except no lawyer in New Jersey would take her case. US Radium had very deep pockets and very good relationships with the local bar association. It took Grace 2 years just to find someone willing to file the paperwork. And then the company deployed its legal strategy. Delay. They argued statute of limitations. The girls had been poisoned years earlier, so technically, the clock had run out. Never mind that radium poisoning doesn't show symptoms for years. Never mind that the company had actively lied. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to wait until the plaintiffs died. By the time the case finally went to court in 1928, Grace could barely sit upright. She had to be carried into the courtroom. The other plaintiffs were in similar condition. These were women in their 20s. Doctors described bones that looked like Swiss cheese under X-ray. One physician took a Geiger counter reading of Grace's breath. It clicked like a machine gun. US Radium's defense? The girls were lying. Or maybe they'd contracted some other mysterious bone disease that definitely wasn't related to the glowing radioactive dust they'd been swallowing for years. The company's medical experts suggested it might be phosphorus poisoning from matches. Yes, the girls had apparently been licking matches in their spare time. But the public was watching. Newspapers ran front-page stories. Photos of the women, frail and glowing, appeared nationwide. The imagery was too stark. US Radium had bet on shame and silence. They lost. The case settled out of court. Each woman received $10,000, plus a $600 annual pension, which sounds almost decent until you realize that life, for most of them, meant another year or two of agony. Grace Fryer died in 1933. She was 34 years old. Molly Muggia died in 1922 at 24. Her death certificate listed syphilis. It was never corrected. But their case created precedent. It established the right of workers to sue their employers for occupational disease. It led directly to the creation of OSHA regulations decades later. The Radium Girls didn't just fight for themselves, they fought for every worker who came after. And they're still glowing. Literally. In some cemeteries in New Jersey and Illinois, if you hold a Geiger counter over certain graves, it screams. The half-life of radium-226 is 1,600 years, which means the women who were told this paint was safe will be radioactive until the year 3500. Long after U.S. Radium Corporation is a footnote, long after every executive who lied to them is dust, they will still be glowing in the dark,